So Zoomy here needs to create an SSH key for a remote server to access it because this server does not allow password authentication. That is not secure enough. So there's a link here to an article on how to use SSH. And Zoomy read through that and decided that she wants a bigger key to be more secure, longer key. So we're going to go with that one right there. And again, you could just do SSH keygen, SSH dash keygen, and that will work just fine on most servers, but some servers say that's not a sufficient key. So we're going to just be overly paranoid, and we did not paste that right. So let's try again. All right, so remember to paste into a shell, it's Control Shift V, and to copy in a shell, it's Control Shift C. All right, so Zoomy's key is being generated. We're going to put it there. The default name they're saying is home zoomy.ssh ID underscore RSA. Sure. We're going to go for the default name. If you choose to rename it, then you have to make sure it goes in the SSH directory. So you would have to do a .ssh, whatever your key name is, for example. Something like that. Otherwise, go with the default or rename whatever's there. Always enter a passphrase. All right, so we can get it right twice in a row. Good. All right, and random key art is cute. Very nice. So now Zoomy has keys in there. Next thing I need to do is I need to cat the public key. So cat.ssh, and then this one is called id.pub. Never give away your private key, which is the key without the .pub. So we're going to copy that, and we're going to send it over to Gary to put it on the server. Control Shift C. All right, and then Gary gets the key. And then Gary is going to go to Zoomy's account on the remote server, Debian DCT here, and he's going to put that in authorized keys. Now Zoomy already has a key, but apparently that key is not the only one Zoomy needs. So we're going to add the new key. So now Zoomy has two different keys there. And at first they look the same, but eventually see they start to look different. And if we scroll to the end here, we can see that one is for Zoomy at Gary's MSI, and this one is for Gary at Gary's MSI. So apparently Gary was masquerading as Zoomy with another public key, or Gary let Zoomy borrow a public key. Never borrow a public key. By the way, Zoomy is my pseudonym. All right, so Control S, Control X, save and exit. So now the key is there. Without that key, Zoomy could not log in. So to log in, I'm going to go back here. And once the key is received on my end, then we can log in with something like this. But you can see there's a minor problem with that, in that it says username, and username needs to be specific because there is no user named username. So this will not work until we replace username with a valid user that's attached to the key in the account we're in. So since I'm in Zoomy's account, I have to log in as Zoomy and hope Zoomy's public key is on the returning server. So enter and we'll find out. Passphrase, got to have a passphrase. By the way, the passphrase should not be the same password used to log into your system. That means if anyone hacks your system, then they can also log into any system you have access to from there. So that would be a bad security decision. So you need to have good pass keys and passphrases, and you need to keep them different, and you need to keep track of them somehow. Otherwise, you are a security flaw in any system that you work on. All right, so now I can see that I am logged in as Zoomy at Debian DCT. I am no longer Zoomy at Gary's MSI. So then here I can see what's going on in my directory, and I can see that there's some existing files here. If I do an ls-a, I can see then there's some other things that are hidden, like my bash history, .local, .ssh. .ssh is where Zoomy's public key is living, so that her private key on Gary's MSI can log her into this public server. Server's not really public because you can only get in with a public-private key pair. Public keys can be posted publicly anywhere. And so there are some websites where you can post your public key so people can then try to communicate with you using the key pair, which should verify you are who you say you are in a very secure way. All right, let's see, what do we want to do next? Next, Zoomy is missing a directory called cs140. So let's add that. So we're going to mk for make, dir, cs140. And in there, we're going to make another directory. And if I want to put it in the right spot, I have to list it properly. So I can do it two different ways. I could either write it as this and then put a directory called special. Directory awareness is important. So that's one way to add that directory. Or I could cd into the cs directory and then, cd helps if I type it correctly. And then in that directory, I could just make another directory called special. So the command you write depends on where you are. So if I'm in the cs140 directory, I would make directory special. If I'm not in that directory, then I would have to make directory cs140/special. Get the difference? If I'm in cs140, in that directory, I can make a directory called special. If I'm not in that directory, then I have to be more specific and say I want to make the directory of special in cs140. Okay. So this command would do what I just did a minute ago, and since it's already there, it's going to say, hey, cannot create that directory because it already exists. Pay attention to any error messages. All right, next thing I want to do is I want to take anything that is a .txt and I want to stick it in the special directory. To do that, I could do a move. I'm going to do a star for anything, then .txt. So all these other files that end in .txt, I want to move them to cs140 special. Now, if I do an ls, I should see none of those files are here anymore. And if I do an ls on cs140 special, I should see they all live there now. Now, if somebody asked me to say, well, how are any of these two files different? Well, I could run a diff command. And I might check to see if numbers, and notice, you hear that beep there? I tried to hit tab and it beeped at me, meaning it doesn't know how to proceed. I want to see if that's different from random. I start typing random, tab, 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 bleep, bleep, bleep. Nothing's happening. Weird. I'm going to type random.txt anyway. What's going to happen if I run this? Well, diff is going to look in the directory I'm in for numbers and random and say, those files don't exist. What do you mean they don't exist? ls, they don't exist in this directory. In order to run that command right there, I would have to move to the special directory. So if I did a move and went into cs140 special, I didn't want to move. I wanted to do a CD. Sorry about that. Move is to actually rename or replace files. I want to do a CD, change directory. All right. And then I up arrow, up arrow, up arrow, and I try to run that. It should say those files are different. It should show me how they're different. Now, if I CD back to the home directory, and again, I run that command, it's going to say those files are not found. Why? Because they don't live in the directory I'm trying to run them in. So if I really wanted to not change directory, then I would have to be more specific about where those files live. I would have to say they live in the CS folder, in the special folder there, and I would have to do that for the other file too. CS, special, and then it'll run them and say, hey, there it is. So I mentioned this in class before, directory awareness is very important. You have to know what directory you're in, and then in that directory, what can you do? And sometimes in a directory, you have to reference other directories. Other times, the files you need are in the directory you're working in, and you don't have to reference other directories. And sometimes it's a combination. Like I could do diffs on two different files in two different directories. Check this out. Suppose I copy the file called NCS special numbers, and I'm going to make that a new file called n.txt. Now notice there's no directory attached to n.txt, which means it's going to go to whatever directory I'm in now. So, and again, before my last ls, the only thing in my home directory was cs140. Now if I do an ls, I should see there's also a file called n.txt. n.txt is a copy of the file in cs140 special numbers. If I wanted to compare this file, so let's do a diff on this new file n with cs140 special, and let's compare it to random. I should see that there is a difference. And if I try to compare it to the file I copied, which is called numbers in the cs140 special directory, I should see nothing, meaning there is no difference between those two files. Notice there was no error message. If I switch to the cs140 directory, special, and then I try to do a diff on the file called numbers and the file called n.txt, I should find that there's an error because n.txt does not live in this directory. From this directory to do the comparison, I would have to back up once, twice, and then find the file called n. Or, notice there's no errors there. Or I could indicate that the file lives in my home directory, /n, tab to complete, and now it's comparing them without error. Please notice the difference between these different references to files and directories. Directory awareness is very important. All right, that's it for now. Hope this helped. Take care. Do good computing. Adios.